Are we live? We are. Hello, everyone. Good to see you. All right. Resize the screen here. Going for a little more legibility in the chat, as well as with code and Unity's font size. So we'll see how that goes. All right. Today, I had to put game dev on hold for a couple days, so I've sort of been frozen in time. Today, I'm going to pick up pretty much where you saw me leave off. First with Felt Tip Circus, then with Frontiers later in the day. So last time we were talking about Felt Tip Circus, we were working on a new version of the Lion Tamer, specifically a new version of the Lion Tamer's cattle prod. The Lion Tamer game had just been overhauled, and the cattle prod was still a piece of temp artwork. It was really ugly, and we were frantically trying to swap it out for something that looked better because it'd just been added to the dev list. So a whole bunch of people were going to be seeing the game, and we needed to fix it up and make a good first impression. Um, like I said, I had to put everything on hold because of, just general life emergencies. Nothing serious at all, just stuff. So I didn't get to push our update until yesterday. But so far the response has been good. Here is the finished, well, close to finished. I haven't finished the texturing, but here is a close to finished version of the whistle that we designed. Come here. As you can see, it has a couple of elements that weren't there when we last talked. Since testing it that day, and since trying it out in the game, we discovered a couple of interesting things. This Lion Tamer game is really in flux. Like we're really trying to find the fun in it and try to find the most engaging way to sort of beat these things back and to have them attack you. And the cattle prod was it was good. I liked it. Unfortunately, it required you to move around a little bit too much. So we ended up we started out with the idea of telescoping cattle prod, something that would just extend so that you didn't have to do so much footwork. I was originally going to go with a X-Acto blade that would extend with a couple of wires at the end, to function as a zapper. Somebody in the chat, I can't remember who, suggested a party whistle because that extends, and I loved that idea. That introduced a different gameplay element, though, namely it can't zap until it's fully extended. So it has to serve a function before it's fully extended. In this case, I scrapped the way that the lions move, and instead of just having them sort of on a track, I went back to the way they used to move before we did the cattle prod, where they would advance slowly and they could be pushed back with the whip. So now the whistle functions sort of like a whip, where if it intersects with a lion before it's fully extended, it doesn't zap them, it just pushes them. And then if you're able to fully extend it, if they're far enough away from you, then you can zap the little LEDs in their mane. So it added a sort of a strange new gameplay element. It didn't. I wasn't convinced it was going to gel at first, but after playing with it for a little bit and resizing the whistle, I think we found kind of a sweet spot where, you know, where you're not constantly pushing them back and they're not constantly advancing too quickly for you to actually try and zap them. I still think it needs work, it needs balance, but it's kind of starting to gel. And then the other thing we noticed was that it was awfully static. The game from beginning to end, which isn't very long, there's a timer on it, Um, it wasn't requiring you to make any new choices as it progressed. It was basically the same choice over and over, and that was getting kind of dry. So we last night added a new element, LEDs. Yes, we added a couple of LEDs going up the side of this thing. Initially, we had one LED which would indicate whether or not the prod was charged, and there was a 2-second delay between when you could actually zap, just to, you know, add a bit of strategy to it. We removed the 2-second delay, but we've added a max number of zaps before you have to recharge the prod. So behind you here, I just put a duplicate of our little battery here as a temporary piece of artwork. Once you've run out of shots, you have to recharge it by holding it over these guys, and it just creates two little, beaming arcs. And one charge gets refilled per second. So um, now there's like, it, the game still doesn't progress in a way that I'd like. I'd like you to be forced to make different decisions as you move along, but now at least you're sort of compelled to like try out different strategies. Like do I charge all five at once and then try to go after, all five LEDs at once? Do I, charge one at a time and then, push it back and then get one and then try another one? Um, it varies quite a bit depending on whether you have three, two, or one lions. It's starting to get interesting. And I think we are going to keep the whistle. I think it does. I think it does work. So I'm just gonna demonstrate this. You can see how it's working. You can see all the stuff I'm talking about. Maybe you'll have some ideas that I haven't had yet as far as ways to vary it, keep it interesting without making it too confusing. Um, One idea we had was to give each line only 3 LEDs and um, increase their aggressiveness every time one was shorted out. So they start out with green eyes and 3 LEDs, and you zap one and they go to yellow and they become more aggressive and they start taking more bites more frequently and they move faster. And then finally they go to red so that it gets harder and harder as time goes on. But we decided that is just inviting a little bit too much confusion. Whatever kind of progression we add has to be a little bit more integrated into what already exists. Because between the whistle and the charger and the lines and the chair, the chair shield, it's already getting a little complicated and unintuitive. Um, so yeah. All right, I'm gonna build and run this thing, and you can see what it is I'm talking about. You're getting my audio this time, right? Yeah, okay, good. Last time I talked for, I think, a solid 5 minutes without realizing that um, my audio was muted. That was fun. Okay. On this playthrough, you probably won't notice, but shadows are disabled. I'm starting to get a little bit of frame jitter when the real-time shadows are enabled, so I've just shut it off. Did you recently add the shield icons to the chairs? I don't remember them from before. Yeah, I did. Again, things are getting complicated enough that we're having to start thinking about how to more clearly communicate the function of all the different objects. Um, yeah, again, you might have some ideas of how to add more complexity without adding more complexity. We'll see. Okay, I'm gonna keep this windowed because I just realized I still haven't added a way to exit um, from full screen mode because, I have shit to do. So I'll keep it windowed and I will be back in a moment. Alt F4. Went down the wrong pipe there. Okay, so that's basically how it works. Um, you see the the first level, the first difficulty level. I was trying to change the difficulty level, by the way, and I couldn't. That was odd. I need to check that out. First difficulty level is essentially a tutorial. It's basically, um, we're thinking of like kids and stuff who just need to be able to get down like hand-eye coordination, figure out how it works. Um, the, that looked like a lot of fun. The game, not your choking. Um, thank you, thank you on both counts. So the first one is incredibly easy if you know what you're doing. It's harder if you don't know what you're doing, which is kind of the point. You're just supposed to play it the first time on easy and kind of get the gist. And then from that point forward, you're either going to be playing medium or hard. That's sort of the philosophy with all of the mini games. So on easy, it's easy, that's fine. On medium, it's a little trickier. On hard is when it starts to get interesting, in my opinion, because you actually have to sort of, it almost becomes like a resource management game, and you have to constantly be keeping the lions back so they're not biting you. That's when it starts to become like a real game to me. You saw there are some problems with, hitboxes and accuracy. There were times when I feel like I nailed the LED, but it didn't go off. That's all stuff that we have to work on. But yeah, that's where we're at with this thing right now. I like it. I think it's working pretty well. Um, there are a couple of I think apart from more of the temp artwork, like we need to rework this charging battery and stuff. I think what's hurting right now is a lack of clear feedback. For instance, when when the prod hits the lion anywhere but an LED, it can still go off. And that kind of makes sense, I suppose. That's how it worked with the original cattle prod, where you were just sort of jabbing it at them. And I'm not sure that that makes sense anymore. I think it might make more sense to disable the shock until you actually land a hit on an LED, just because you kind of can't tell what's going on now. The fact that it can't shock until it's fully extended, combined with the fact that it can shock on any surface, it creates confusion. I've seen confusion in people who've been playing it. I can sort of see them stop and wonder, wait, I just saw a flash. Does that mean I landed a hit? I don't understand. So I think I'm going to disable it unless you're actually touching an LED. So whistle. All right, so last night I moved some of this code around, but it's still pretty simple. Basically how this works is we've got this whistle model, which I'll open in Maya real quick so you can see what kind of animation we have attached to it. We've got a whistle model with a whole bunch of joints that unroll when you hit the use button. And each joint has a capsule collider. Let's keep chat visible here. I think it's a good idea to disable the shock. Yeah, I do too. Yeah, I think it just makes things clearer. All right, so here's the animation I ended up doing. And it's nothing fancy. I thought of using a spline or something, but in the end we just went with just a basic set of bones, and I rolled them up uh, myself, just one after the other, until we got 90 frames of this just opening and closing. And then in the game, what I do is when you press the use button, I start, um, I reset the animation to 0, and then I set the normalized time based on an animation curve defined here. So as you hold down the button, it starts at 0, goes up, you get a little bit of flippy floppy at the end, like this, because that's what these things do. And then eventually you run out of steam and uh, it retracts. And if you let your hand off the button at any point, it begins retracting immediately. It just, stops using this curve and just starts rolling back immediately. So you can do like little blasts that only extended halfway or something. Um, Now, each of these colliders has a tag called interceptor. And the idea here is when I enter a collision with another object, I check to see if the collider that entered into the collision has that tag interceptor. If it does, then one of two things happens. If the thing that we collided with is a body part, if it has the tag body part, as most of the pieces of this lion do, then it finds the lion that it touched and says, okay, you are going to be pushed back. And the lion, whose movement I won't really get into, it's just moving forward constantly. Um, uh, it has that pushback applied over several seconds. And in addition, um, it counts as being intercepted. So from that point forward, while it's extending, um, it says, okay, I've hit something. I cannot extend beyond this point because um, if it were to unroll further, it would just go through the object and look weird. So it stops this animation curve wherever that happened. If it was at 0.5, it says, okay, that's the maximum I can unroll on this trip. And it clamps this value for the rest of that hit. So that's how I'm able to, hit a line in the face and have it unroll until it hits the face and then stop. It's still a little funky, like there are cases where the line is moving a lot and the end of the whip intersects with its head. It clips through. It'd be nice if these are actually physics objects instead of just attached to an animation. I tried a little experiment where, and you can see the remnants of it here, where I had a separate whip object, or not whip, but whistle object with the same hierarchy. I made this one invisible, and I had this one follow the bones one by one with as physics objects by attaching or by applying forces to them. And it kind of worked, but the little pieces of the whistle would get hung up on things frequently, and the whole point of getting away from the whip was to avoid dealing with, physics crap. So I'm probably not going to go that route. Um, then at the very end, you have a sphere collider, which should be a trigger. It's set to be a trigger in the script on start anyway, but um, so this is where this cattle prod can intercept with one of these LEDs and actually trigger a hit. So that happens on trigger enter. Okay. So what I have here is if the number of shots that we have, and you saw on this little readout, you can have up to 5 shots. If we have no shots and we intersect the body part, it just pushes the lion in the same way that the rest of the thing does. Otherwise, if it hits a target and each of these LEDs is tagged as a target, then it'll zap the LED. Um, and I also threw the start button in here, which is a little kludgy, but that's fine. Okay, now here is where we have all of the other zapping going on. So all I have to do to prevent that from happening is to make it not care about any other tag. So now no matter what we hit, um, it's not going to zap. It's only going to zap when we hit either the button, the start button, or one of the lion's targets. Now, another thought I've had is that we should really swap out this trigger for one of these LED targets so it's totally clear that your purpose in this game is to zap these targets, because right now this trigger is sort of disconnected from everything. I'm not going to worry about that right now, but that's definitely on my to-do list. Okay. And then the other thing was I wasn't positive that the hitboxes on the lions were totally legit, so I'm going to take a quick look at that. Check out my lion prefab here. Now, when I hit when I do on trigger enter here, if we don't have our thumb down on the trigger, if we're not pressing it, I say we do nothing. But I'm going to remove that because something else I have going on in here is in press down over time, which is a coroutine where I'm extending it and then rolling it back. I actually check to see if the normalized extension is greater than or equal to this minimum extension needed for a spark to happen, which I think is set to 0.92 something, 0.9125. So if we're rolled out 91%, that's when a spark is possible. Before that, uh, the wires are still like a little bit too curled up, so I say it's not possible, which means that that press down check isn't really necessary. And just in case we're letting up on the trigger just at the very end, even though we're extended beyond that point, I don't want to rule out a spark happening. So I'm going to remove that. Yeah, here I totally disable the collider altogether if we're not past that extension. So that's unnecessary. And then I also want to, if I hit something or if we've intercepted something, I don't think I need to check if we've intercepted something either. Because if we've intercepted something to a point where it prevents us from extending all the way, the collider will still be disabled. And I just want to rule out any cases, any possible cases where this trigger should be, you know, should be firing off a hit, but doesn't. If the num shots is less than or equal to 0, that's fine. That may have been part of the reason you felt you were getting hits that didn't register. Yeah, I think so. I think so. Especially the one where if you let your thumb off the trigger and it's rolling back, but you're still technically extended beyond the point where you could zap something. I think that was happening a lot too, because I would, you know, I would see it roll to the end and then I would let go, and it wouldn't fire. Now here on collision enter, if I've hit something or I've intercepted, I return. That should be fine. Because if we're past the point, hit something is a bool that gets set when you actually hit one of these targets. It's set in spark, hit something. So it only happens when you actually nail a target. So if I've hit something and then I'm entering additional collisions, I don't care, that's fine. because by that point I have to be so rolled out that additional collisions don't matter. I'm just thinking this all through here. Um, the other thing is I don't want to be able to trigger more than one. I don't want to be able to trigger more than one spark, like target hit per extension. So if I hit something here and this gets reset every time I start to extend it, if I hit something there, then I also want to break out of it. Okay. Now the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change the. Okay, I was going to check the hitboxes though. Hold on. No, those look fine. Those look generous. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, and they're all tagged as target. Targets itself is tagged as a body part, and that's correct. Body part, body part, body part. So if it's tagged as a body part and the whistle hits it, it'll push it back. What about the wheels and the feet? I guess it doesn't really matter, I suppose, but I'll. Oh, those are targeted. Those are body parts. Okay, that's good. All right, the line's looking fine. I am going to modify the colliders on the whip here. Now, I feel like what might be happening is as it's rolling out, these edges are getting snagged a little bit on like the corner of the head and stuff. My daughter who's sitting here with me watching wonders if you have any children. No, no children. Not yet. I have nieces um, who will probably help me test this game the next time they visit, but no children of my own. Someday, someday. Okay, so as I'm jabbing these, at the lion's face or whatever, and I'm trying to hit this target, I think what's happening is they're getting clipped on this mesh collider in kind of an unfair way. So what I'm going to do is taper it near the end. I'm gonna leave that trigger nice and fat, and then I'm going to make these guys a little bit smaller as you get to the end, so it feels a little less unfair. Because your aim and your depth, the end of the whip used to be the whip used to be a little bit bigger. I keep calling it a whip. It's not a whip, it's a whistle. Um, the whistle used to be bigger and it would extend kind of beyond your ability to judge depth. And even now, even though I've resized it and made it a little bit smaller, it's still a little bit much to ask for that kind of precision with your aim. So 12, 11, okay. I'm just gonna make I'm gonna make about the latter half a little bit more forgiving. Let's see, what was I at? 13. I like nice steady progression, so even though it's not totally necessary, I'll make this increase by 0.01 each time. Okay. I'm gonna go a little bit further. Okay, that's better. How old's your daughter? Is she capable of playing VR games yet? Have you had this discussion with people yet? Um, I remember kind of poo-pooing the idea that there needs to be a minimum age for playing VR games until one Thanksgiving I visited my in-laws and my brother-in-law is the one with the nieces. He has four nieces, and They are, oh, I'm gonna screw this up. Well, one's like brand new, so she can't like even stand, let alone play VR. Uh, Another is no, one, two. My wife is gonna be so embarrassed, and I can't say how old our nieces are. Okay, I think it's zero, basically, two, four, six. I think that's how old they are. And it was funny because I set up the VR system to just, demo to the family. Um, and I remember for the first time sort of considering each of them trying it. Obviously, the youngest one can't try it. The 2-year-old, I realized that there's no way that that's plausible. Um, she would just like walk into things or be terrified or something. The 4-year-old, maybe I felt like no. I felt like that would just be almost more dangerous because she's even more mobile. And then the 6-year-old, that's when it started to make sense because I feel like she's at least capable of like remembering that she's in a virtual world and not, running down the stairs with the headset on or something. Um, so after that Thanksgiving, I started thinking differently about the age requirements. I think Oculus said 7 is the um, best age for someone to be playing VR, like a good minimum age. And I actually agree with that now. I thought they were being way too conservative, but after watching these, you know, half-formed people sort of like bump around, without a VR headset on, like with this in mind, I began to think, no, that we're probably inviting a lot of head injuries here. 5, okay. So maybe supervised VR. Maybe sitting VR would be more appropriate for someone who's younger, as opposed to the standing VR where it's really immersive and you don't really feel like you have a television on your face anymore. You actually feel like you're in there. Yeah, uh, my 6-year-old niece is really adept at Minecraft. Oh, you want to hear a sad story? Um, she was she had a birthday coming up. I heard this secondhand because um, my wife video chats with the in-laws a lot, and I hear she's got her birthday coming up, and it's a Minecraft birthday, right? That sounds like fun. And I've seen her like mess with the worlds and stuff. She like makes houses and stuff, um, and they're pretty good, for a 6-year-old. And so she's super excited about this Minecraft birthday party. And then I think the day before, my brother-in-law is installing a new version of Windows on the machine and accidentally wipes all of her Minecraft worlds, unrecoverable. I felt so bad. Can you imagine? Can you imagine being that age and having a Minecraft party coming up and then boom, your dad just kills all your work? It's not funny. It's not funny. Um, but yeah, I couldn't help but laugh. It's just that's the stuff that in 20 years from now, she's going to be telling her friends, about her traumatic experience. Like, oh yeah, you want to hear what my dad did? I still remember it. Okay. All right, so that's feeling good. I'm gonna take a quick look at the ticket booth scene and see what's up with these guys because I couldn't change them. I might have run into that a couple weeks ago and not remember to try and fix it, but whatever. Okay, difficulty selector. What's going on with you, buddy? Oh no, that's terrible. Blame it on Windows 10. Yeah, we'll blame it on Windows 10. We'll also blame it on the fact that my brother-in-law has 4 children and is so perpetually tired that I'm not sure it's really fair to hold him accountable for, you know, what is, in all honesty, a minor screw up like that. Um, when I have kids, it will not be 4 kids. Not after watching him deal with it. Okay, on player touch. There's a problem right there. I'm still using my old hand system. I had a custom hand system that that didn't use this Newton VR library that I'm using now, and it had its own set of messages. So now I need to, what is going on, Mono? Come on. I need to swap on player touch for on trigger enter. And we're going to listen to touch without getting the hand because we no longer have the class hand. But I don't think I use it in here anyway. No, I don't. Okay. I'm going to save the party whistle. All right, so I'm going to try that on hard right off the bat and just see how it feels. And, oh, do I have an error? I do. Oh, I see, because I pass it a null when that's not necessary. Yeah, do you have more than one kid? This is a conversation I'm having with my wife right now, whether to have more than one kid. After watching, I was totally sold on two until seeing what my in-laws go through with multiple children. It's exponentially more difficult. So I'm kind of leaning towards one right now, but she's not having that, so that's a discussion, that we're having. You have four. Okay, so you understand. You understand. Do you have a dog too? My brother-in-law got a dog, and I just couldn't believe it. It's like, why? Why would you why would you do that to yourself? Okay, I'm gonna step away for a minute and play the hard version of this real quick. We'll see how it feels. Disaster. Um, the accuracy in the hitboxes were okay. When I would miss a shot, it felt fairly out of range and stuff. But they stole my whistle. Um, I guess it must have been the jaw action, because the jaw has a collider and the face has a collider, and uh, when it reached out and bit, suddenly I couldn't pull my whistle back. Um, so that was interesting. Man, I don't even know how to fix that. I might have to just change it so that I'm using softer edged colliders on the face and jaw. Yeah, because it got totally stuck. I couldn't do anything. Um, and that's obviously not good. Like when you're in those close quarters, you have to be able to push them back. So that was interesting. I've got my volume up, right? Yeah, okay. All right, but these guys worked. The whistle was it was looking good. It felt a little bit better when I was missing shots. I thought, okay, that's fair. I can tell I'm out of range. I didn't feel like I'd hit it, and um, was getting cheated. So I'm actually going to do a build of this, and then I'm going to move on to Frontiers. Um, Now I might as well demo this because I'm not positive a lot of people who work with Unity know about this, only because I'm constantly looking for ways to, speed things up and make things better, and I only learned about this recently. So, as sort of a PSA, I want to go over how I make my builds now. If this was Euclidean, it might be a better demonstration because we're not doing anything fancy here, but maybe that's actually better because I can just explain really quick. Um, so I used to do the thing where, you go to build settings and you change the target platform and architecture and you change your player settings depending on what kind of builds you need to do. In the case of Felt Tip Circus, I'm only doing a 32-bit and a 64-bit build, so it's not a big deal. With Euclidean, um, the different build types, they add up quick because you've got a 32 and 64-bit build for Steam. You've got a build for Oculus, which has all the Steam features ripped out, which means you need to set some um, scripting defines. Oh Lord, what did I just do? I think I just screwed those up. Right, you need to set some scripting defines, like no Steam or whatever. Um, you might want to use different um, rendering settings, depending on what platform you're using. I do this in Frontiers too. And so I discovered a couple of months ago that I can actually build a player through scripts instead of setting all this stuff because the more options you have and the more different configurations you need to do, the more the likelihood of getting one of these things wrong when you export it. And it can be hard to test whether you've done it right until it's already uploaded and like in their system, uh, which is obnoxious. So uh, I discovered that you can do all of this with a menu command, a custom menu command. So for instance, I'll just build the 32-bit player here. And all that's doing is it's setting a build target. It's deleting all the player prefs just for cleanliness. It um, sets which levels to put into the build and in which order, which can be super important um, because oftentimes in the actual manual build settings, a mouse click, an errant mouse click would rearrange things in Euclidean, and stage 4 would be above stage 5, and we couldn't figure out what was going on for a little while. I can tell it to put it in my Steam depot depending on which build I'm doing, and then I can set my scripting define symbols. Here I'm just setting them all universally, but with Euclidean, I would have a switch based on the target platform and uh, set them all appropriately. And this is so great. I love it so much. This level of customization. And in addition, I discovered something else new, um, kind of in the same vein. Once this builds, I'll show you. Basically, Um, you can have a script that runs on a scene just before it's built. So in the circus scene, I have these things called activation objects, all of which must be deactivated before the scene is loaded. If one of them is activated, then things go a little crazy and you end up not being able to play the game. You have to rebuild. And this is happening often enough because it's an easy thing to forget that I thought there must be a way to automate this. And sure enough, there is. And let me find it here. Prep circus scene. So it's just my scene post processor, and you add an attribute to it with the scene number, which in this case is, no, that can't be the scene number. I'm already confused. Whatever. I only looked this up once and did it once, so I won't pretend to be an expert. But uh, what happens is when you process the scene before building it, I go through every act, and if I find an activation object, I set it to inactive. And I also set this property to false because that could cause problems too. And now when I'm, messing with my circus scene, I don't have to methodically go through. For instance, you can see here this activation object is active. Now, this should be off, but when I do the build, it's going to be fine. It's going to be fine because of that script. I love this stuff. I love anything that makes it less possible for me to make an error as I'm pushing this stuff out to Steam. So I'm going to run that and let that chug for a bit. So that's going to upload to Steam Pipe, and I think we're done with Felt Tip Circus today. Close you, close you. Okay, so I am going to put a little card in here so I know when to split these streams, and I'm now going to switch from Felt Tip Circus over to Frontiers. So I'll see you in a second.